welcome back to the Sharia Wellness Podcast. I'm Ashley Hendrickson, your host, and I'm here today with two very special people that I hold near and dear to my heart, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Dr. Ray and Jean. They are co-founders of the Lighthouse Emotional Wellness Center and also an amazing program called Couples Synergy. So without further ado, will you two please give us a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us on your podcast, Ashley.
That was a very nice introduction also.
So Jean and I, we started the Lighthouse in 2002. We've been working with couples over 20 years now. And we also started and co-founded our program called Couple Synergy, which is a very specific and unique model in working with couples that we find much more effective than traditional marriage and couples counseling.
And we started this company, the Lighthouse, because as traditional marriage counselors, you're just kind of thrown in front of a couple. There's not a lot of training. And the experience was kind of awful. And we thought, we could do this better. And so as a couple, we started working with couples in 2002 and have learned so much about how we relate and what it does to our health, our finances, everything. And it's just a great passion of ours.
Fun story about why we called our center the Lighthouse is that on our honeymoon, we toured the East Coast. And one of the coolest moments that we had was up in Maine, in Portland, Maine Lighthouse, and it was raining sideways. And we jumped out of the car to take a look at the lighthouse. You see the light sweep around, through the storm. You could hear the foghorn. And so the lighthouse became a symbol for our marriage, right? Is that even though during the storms of a marriage and relationship, there's always this guiding light. There's always this, foundation that we can also draw upon.
Which doesn't do the work for you.
It doesn't do the work for you. It shows you where to go, but you still have to row the boat, right?
Right. Shows you things maybe you don't want to see.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if you guys have picked up on this yet, but this whole platform is designed for me to help you all, the viewers, reach people who can help you in your healing journey. And I'm sharing a lot of the people who have helped me along the way. And so I've known these two for about 10 years, and I can testify to the fact that they were definitely a light during a lot of stormy seasons for me. So I have so much gratitude for you both. I can't even put it into words.
Thank you so much.
But I love the symbol of the Lighthouse and what you both stand for. And I think it's important maybe to share with what makes the way that you work with couples different than a traditional counseling setting, because it is a very unique approach that you do take.
Absolutely. Traditional marriage counseling is done by one therapist. Typically, 80% of therapists that do marriage counseling are female. 80% of marriage counseling is initiated by the woman in the relationship. So right off the bat, the guy is being dragged in and he doesn't want to be there. Immediately when he walks into the room, he's outnumbered. So, the cards are stacked, against success in traditional marriage counseling. Plus, the majority of marriage counselors out there who say that they're marriage counselors, they don't have any training in it.
Mm-hmm.
In any master's or any doctoral program, maybe you will have one class in marriage and family. And unless you go on to seek out more training and more certifications in that, anyone can call themselves a marriage counselor. And this is what most people don't know. In fact, my dissertation found that marriage counseling, traditional marriage counseling done by one therapist, has the worst success rate across the board of all therapies.
Wow.
Because of that fact alone, is that it's done by one therapist. Typically, a couple's going to come in, they're going to fight in front of this therapist, and the therapist is going to be a referee. So one person or both people are walking out of there feeling frustrated. And there isn't any forward momentum. There isn't any structured type of program that a couple can go through that they can actually learn new skills and not just repeat the same conflict cycle over and over again.
So that is a unique thing about what we teach in Couple Synergy is skills that people don't learn because we've evolved so much as human beings. So our marriage looks nothing like our parents' marriage. Mm-hmm. And their marriage was sort of more similar to their parents' marriage. And up and coming people, the roles of society and the expectations, those are gone, like my mom and dad conform to. And
Sure.
so you have this couple coming in. Now a guy has two women teaching him how to be a good man, a good husband, and a good father.
Telling him.
And how do we know as women what that position is? And there's not enough men in this world, and this is a very important aspect for men, because a couple hundred years ago, a boy would reach the age of 13 or so, and they would actually go live with another family as an apprentice. So if a family had a bunch of boys and the dad is the miller, then all the boys can't learn milling, or the family won't really be strong and survive. So each boy goes to, this one goes to the blacksmith. And he's not just there to learn blacksmithing. He's also there to learn, don't touch my daughter. And if there's a problem in the village, if someone's house is on fire, you're a man now, you're going to come and help. You are going to give back to your community. And it's a long process, 6-8 years, that these boys are ushered into manhood, and not necessarily by their fathers. And then when the Industrial Revolution hit, dads left the families, and a lot of our boys are being raised by mothers and female teachers. And there's a big absence of learning to come across that bridge that men need. Us as women, we see our moms, we see the female teachers, we know what we're doing for the most part, but a guy's role is very different, and we can't teach that as women.
What does that look like? What are some of the skills that people will learn in these workshops to help them improve their relationship?
Well, one of the things I start out with in working with men is having them define what their value set is, right? Reconnecting with their own integrity, or even defining what their integrity is, because that's not anything that they've been taught, and so they define what it means to them to be a good father, what it means to them to be a good husband, and what does it mean to them to be a good man in this world, right? Because it's only from that pure, genuine, authentic value set then you can actually walk into this world and take your role, right? And so most men are taking on the role of passive responsibility in this world, right? Active responsibility is that I see that there are issues, there's things that need to be done. I'm going to take the initiative to actually step up and do it. But passive responsibility is I see all these things that need to be done, but I'm going to wait until someone tells me what to do. And when they tell me what to do, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to take that initiative to step into that space because there's too much risk, right? And that's what men are being taught right now is don't take the initiative, don't jump in there because it's going to be offensive. You're going to be, opening the door for a woman who wants to be independent, and you need to just take a step back and wait till you're told what to do.
One of the main reasons couples come in is because they think they have a communication breakdown, and they're so struggling with that. And really what's happened is a few other things. And so a lot of things that we do in our program are helping people understand all of these dynamics that came into play that are really natural and normal and developmental in a relationship. And so one of the things that we go through as all people is a domestication process. And so when we're children, we have what we know and we have what we want in our hearts. And we're often taught, don't trust your heart, right? You want to go and be an artist? No, you have to go to school and become, an engineer or something, because that's what's going to make money. And so when we have a split between our head and heart, we will always defer to our head because it's what we know. Sure. And we like what we know. We don't like the unknown. And so that's the first part, is helping the individual person, both parts, have this conversation inside themselves, because most of us get lost in trusting ourselves again. And our gut is so accurate and we don't trust it. And that's the first part. The second part is how our brains work differently and why communication is actually breaking down, and how it works when we have stress and we lose our focus and vision, our ability to hear. And so all of those things then play into teaching empathy and how to really see your partner, because our first relationship's parent-child. and we show up as parent-child, and we can't help it. That's all we know. So our real goal is helping people be true partners and not flip-flopping the parent-child role all the time.
Sure. So what would you define as a healthy relationship? What does that look like from your perspective as professionals in the space?
So as Jean mentioned, the parent-child relationship is something that all couples start out with. All right. So this is our first relationship that's role model to us is parent-child, us as the children and our parents as the parents. And so that's what we learn about relationships right from the beginning. So when we get into a committed partnership, we project exactly what we learned, and that is parent-child. And so we start out us being the child, our partner being the parent, and then we flip-flop. And couples struggle with this for a while. And if they don't learn how to evolve into an adult-adult relationship, then what happens is that they play out this parent-child for a very long time. And many times they become they create parallel lives, right? Because they don't want to get into that conflict, that push-pull of parent-child. You know, rebellious child, parent domineering, controlling, right? And so they get into this parallel live situation. So I'm going to do my own thing, you're going to do your own thing, right? And a lot of couples survive like that for many, many years without doing anything different. And if they don't learn those skills, if they don't learn how to merge in something we call forging, then they are not able to create that adult connection where it's egalitarian and it's equal. And that's really where the potential of having that healthy relationship exists.
So when we look at a healthy relationship, we define it very similar to the way we define a healthy body, right? So when you take a stress test, they don't care how fast you run or how far you can run. What they care about is how quickly can you recover from a stressor. And a relationship will always constantly have stressors because we're designed to grow. We're not designed to be happy. So our goal is really not that a relationship is conflict free. In fact, you can't grow if you don't have some conflict in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what do you do with that? How do you recover? What do you do when you get stuck? And when we get stuck, when we get wounded, we regress. You know, that's just human nature. So like say a child's potty trained and then they move to a new house and then all of a sudden they're having accidents again because they're like going through this stress. So that's really what we're looking for, including, you know, the goal is not always that the relationship stays together, but that each person becomes whole and healthy and knows themselves and how to navigate the world and how to truly take responsibility for your own emotions. And that's what emotional wellness means. It means I have some knowledge and awareness of what I feel, and I will take responsibility for that. And we can never change our partner. We can only change ourselves. And so to make good critical decisions about our relationships, to regulate our emotions, and to recover from stressors.
That's great. And I like how you mentioned one, Dr. Wright, surviving that way. And Jean, you said not always staying together. And so what are some common misconceptions maybe about what successful therapy looks like? Because maybe it is the identification of the relationship coming to its end, and that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you're right. That is a misconception about successful marital or couples therapy, is that the relationship stays together at all costs. And that's not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely relationships, you know, that are better off not being together. Right. One of the things we say all the time is that every marriage ends. We just don't know how or when. And even a couple that's been together for 50 years, at some point, you know, someone is passing away in the relationship and the marriage is over.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what is the goal then? The goal isn't to be together forever. The goal is to learn what it is that we're supposed to learn with the partner while we are with them. Right? And both learn about ourselves and learn about how we are within a relationship. Right? So the goal in life really is to grow, to
Sure.
evolve. Right?
Every couple is in love on their wedding day. And every relationship requires two people choosing every day if they're going to be in this, if they're going to do it. And what we do when we start out, we're so automatic. And that automaticness, it it meets some needs that maybe weren't getting met when you're not in a relationship. So now you have a person there, you have more, feel more, maybe more some security or someone to count on. And then once that need kind of fills up, then now what? Because we're designed to grow, we can't just get there and go, okay, we're good, right? And so what we're looking for is the now what. And so any relationship, whenever a couple comes in, we always say the condition of your relationship is a 50-50. And people don't realize that, especially if you're the part of the relationship that's been doing 85% of the work. And that happens a lot. And it's not always the woman, but a lot of times it is, where one person's giving a little and the other one's giving a lot. And the one that's giving a lot thinks it's not me, it's them. But the problem for them is they're giving too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so making those corrections can lead to, well, if I'm giving 85%, they're giving 15%, are they going to cover the difference if I pull back? And that's the fear. And that's where it's a 50-50. Like, you're going to find out if you do that.
Sure.
And so if a relationship is no longer helping you grow and teaching you about yourself, then it's probably a different decision you're going to make. And that is, like you said, we're going to show you the hard stuff. We're going to say, what happens if you drop the ball? Will your partner pick it up? And if the answer is no, and now you have a witness calling you out on it, saying, why do you keep rescuing him? He's not your child, he's your partner,
Mm-hmm.
or vice versa. Then that becomes something to really think about. Like, is this really a relationship that can help me become a better version of myself? And can I help my partner become a better version of themselves? Are they working on it with me? Do I care more than they do? Do they care more than I do?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, why, what do we say? The unexamined life is not worth living.
Mm-hmm.
An unexamined relationship is not worth the pain of it. Because relationships are difficult.
Yeah, they sure are. All of them, right? All relationships
Mhm.
are challenging in some way at some point in time. So I'm hearing it doesn't sound like couples necessarily need to be married to be participating in your therapy or your programs. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, we do focus on committed partnerships.
Sure.
Right.
What about people who are getting ready to get married? Would you suggest that working with you prior to making that big commitment is a good idea? And do you work with a lot of those types of couples?
It's really
Not
interesting.
enough.
Yeah, it is. Not enough. And the Catholic Church, we were both raised Catholic, but the Catholic Church really focuses on doing pre-Cana. It's a half-hearted really attempt to actually help couples join together.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great sentiment, but the thing is that there's a lot lacking there. But obviously the Catholic Church saw that there was a need,
Sure.
to teach couples that are coming together, about the struggles and challenges that they're going to be facing. It's not like Disney is that, you're up at the altar, it's happily ever after. No, that's actually when, the hard work actually starts.
Sure.
So, couples who are, and we have worked with several couples, before they got married. And there were couples that we actually officiated their wedding. But, we taught them the skills that's necessary and let them know about some of the challenges that they were going to be facing, merging together.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to consider, because I think in general, there's probably a misconception that if you're in therapy before you get married, you shouldn't be getting married. And I just don't think that that's an accurate perspective for most people to have, but it seems to be the consensus, unless it's something that is pushed on you by your church or religious organization. Right. And so,
yeah. And I think there's a difference really in terms of saying therapy or counseling and coaching or preparation. Right. And so when we went through the pre-Cana, I mean, that was antiquated. I'm sure that was written in the 1970s or something. And you have a couple that's married and not always happily, because they end up coming to us at some point, and they've been the ones teaching it. And we created a program called Synergy from the Start, which we thought would make an awesome shower gift for someone. And it has those skills in it. But we also found that right around the time a couple's getting married, they're not too open to hearing about that there's going to be problems. They're in love and, but I think it's a really good idea for them to know it's going to be normal. This is going to happen to you. And we do this to prepare ourselves for school or a job or anything. And then marriage, or relationships, which is one of the greatest things we can do, nothing, right? People will spend $50,000 on their wedding and care more about the color of the flowers or the cake than if they're really prepared, because we haven't been taught that there's even a way to prepare. And everyone thinks, oh, this will just happen naturally. And it doesn't. And I think it's important for them to know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the relationship should just click, right? It should be easy.
Right. And I think, we probably, most of us grew up in an environment where our parents, if they did have struggles, we didn't see a whole lot. I mean, some of us probably did see it if it was an extreme situation, but people didn't talk about having trouble in their marriage, and they didn't talk about the option to change or grow or leave or stay. And so I think, growing up for me, and I think my parents are relatively happily married still, it just seemed like, well, it just works like that,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think a lot of people, at least in my generation, I think maybe the younger generation has an idea that there's work involved.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people that I know, it just was like, we never even thought about it.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, generations ago, roles were very static. Men knew what they had to do, women knew what they had to do, and there was
Right.
very little crossover. And so they just stayed in their lane. There was expectations about how the marriage was supposed to be, and it was cookie cutter. Everybody down the street had the same kind of setup in their family, right? And nowadays, it's not like that anymore. So, the challenges and the factors that are involved in relationships are much more complex. The blended family is the leading family structure in the United States right now. And there isn't any role modeling for that. So the nuclear family is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do couples deal with that now? Where do they go for guidance? Who are their mentors, right? So now you need, two parents to be working in order to sustain a household now. You've got kids, you've got step parents, you've got, just all these factors.
And a lot less community support and
yeah.
family.
Yeah, I was going to say, that families generations ago didn't really have to deal with.
And a lot of kids are growing up in divorced homes, and they didn't get to see the conflict, and suddenly their world's turned upside down. And many of them are choosing not to marry because they know there's work, but they don't know how it's done. And so they're pretty jaded. And sadly, because what that does, and you see it across the board, is it increases our anxiety, increases our depression. All that disconnect we have, it's not good for us. And so there's this fear of being together because they don't know how to do it. And the on the other side, the anxiety and depression that is increased because we're isolated.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can probably resonate with feeling isolated, especially these last few years. And it really does take a big toll on health all the way around, including our physical health. Looking at healthy relationships, though, let's kind of look at the opposite. So I think it's important, too, for a lot of people to understand how to identify what abuse looks like in relationships, because it comes in all forms. And sometimes it's hard to see that. So how can you sort of help to shed some light on what may be red flags for people who may be feeling like this doesn't seem healthy, but maybe it's what I've always known and I don't really know what to do about it?
Well, there are the really obvious red flags, someone who is having an addiction problem, or there's actual physical abuse going on, or there's an affair going on, or affairs, lying, deception, all of that going. Those are pretty obvious red flags. But, I wanted to just mention that we teach other people how to treat us. And so one form of abuse that most people are not aware of or don't really look at is the abuse that we do to ourselves. Right? How are you allowing someone to treat you badly? What is it that you are telling yourself? How do you see yourself in a way that is bringing about that or attracting that type of treatment towards yourself? And I think that's something that most people don't really look at.
I would agree. And I think that is an extremely powerful thing to be sharing with this audience, because in my personal experience, that was one of my big revelations working with Gene. And it really was an enlightening moment. Not really a feel-good one, if I'm being honest, but really important. And it did really shift the trajectory of my life. And is really so important. I think that's what, again, in my experience, you guys are great at allowing people to see where they need to take ownership over what's happening to them and step out of that victim role, right? And start to own their own part in how they ended up in this particular relationship or situation.
We live in a world that we deal in sound bites. And the sound bites today are abuse, trauma, narcissism, all those kind of things. And what people don't really understand is these are not black and white concepts. These are a continuum. So when we use the word abuse, at what point is it abuse? And at what point is it a power differential that one person, both people, are choosing to participate in? And there's a really great book by Eric Fromm called The Art of Loving. And he talks about this, and he says, the most difficult part about being human is our separateness. It causes us a great deal of pain to be separate. And so one of the ways that we falsely try to run from that feeling of separateness is by creating a symbiotic relationship where we give our control up to someone and we allow that in our life, or vice versa, or we flip-flop that. And to be an adult in a relationship is to take that power. And so most relationships have a power differential that both people are participating in, and that is not necessarily abuse. Abuse, when it gets to the point where we're crossing that threshold into what we're really going to call abuse, is when someone has controlled someone enough that they have a great fear of speaking in the relationship, of standing up for themselves, or
even leaving.
Yep. Asking for their needs to get met. If you're in that category, you need help. That's abuse. And the way our brains work, we can't get out of it. And it's very systematic in the way that it happens. And so a lot of it, as children, when we don't get the result we want, we go, what should I do different? Right? I didn't get that right on the test. I need to learn that and do it better so I get what I want. But when you're in a relationship, what if it's the other person? How do you know? And girls tend to, when they're hurt, they tend to hurt themselves. And boys, when they're hurt, they tend to lash out. So we have this set up already. And so who's ever in that position that has given up their power and they feel a great fear in taking it back, they need support with that. That can actually become dangerous. So that's abuse over there. Over here is something else. That's poor negotiations. And you also would benefit from support around that, because what you're doing is what you watched your parents do or what you think you should do, and you're not in your right mind. Literally, we have three minds, right? The emotional, the subconscious, and then the logical. So you're not in the right spot to help yourself navigate that. And I don't know why, by design, when we're emotionally in it, we can't see it.
Do you have any techniques that you can share for people to maybe improve their situation currently, if they find themselves in a place like that where they need a little bit of help?
One of the things that we have in our culture right now is an over bombardment of distraction. And we don't have any place where you contemplate, reflect on your life, feel.
Or connect with your own intuition.
Yes.
Your gut is right. And if it feels off, if something feels off, don't just assume that it's you and you should do something. That's reactive. But rather, go for a walk. Find time to be quiet. Find time where nothing is in your face, not your phone, not a screen, not your kids, not and go sit and contemplate. And again, you look at society changes. When I was a kid, we went to church every day. You had to sit there. We also had something called boredom.
Right. That's
And
where
boredom,
creativity is born, right? Is when
yep,
you're bored.
that's the precursor of that. So give yourself permission to have a space to listen to yourself. And I would also recommend initially pull it all on yourself. I don't know what I've done to create this in my life, because that's a better question than what did my partner do to me? And if I'm not happy, what can I do? And am I with someone who's willing to work on it with me? And
Right.
ask those kind of questions. That's the whole part of what we want people to learn, is to trust themselves. And our domestication teaches us not to do that. So it's a perfect setup, and it's not your fault, right?
And I think the tendency is to go to others, right? I mean, our one of the innate things that we want inside of us is to belong. And so we'll go to the mommy groups, or we'll go to, the online support groups and everything, to seek out those answers, when really the answer is within you. And, it's not that there isn't anything wrong with going to community, but these false type of communities, there's this level of anonymity. And, back in the day when you went to your community, they took on the consequences of you making those changes and those behaviors, right? They all shared in the consequences of whatever choices that you were making. But these false communities, they don't have to share in any of those consequences. They could tell you, go do this, you should do that, you deserve that. But you make those changes, it doesn't affect their lives at all.
Sure.
Right.
And I would think that there's probably a danger in that, just because we tend to look for the community that will echo what we already believe to be true versus challenge what we're telling ourselves.
For
So there
sure.
may not be real support and growth opportunities in that situation.
I was just thinking, because I've been a part of some of those groups online, and they're ran by someone with an agenda of some kind, usually financial, and they tout a lot of really unhealthy yet logical responses. And I was just thinking about, if this was a group for your physical health, would anyone say, you know what, sometimes that tub of ice cream is the best you can do, so you go for it? Or something like, no one's going to say that. Not
Right.
out loud. They're going to be like, well, try, but in this situation, it's projection, and if someone has chosen to leave or to stay in an unhealthy situation, they're just going to project that onto someone else. That doesn't mean they've mastered it.
Right.
And someone who's really a relationship expert, probably not going online and giving out information, because that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You're not
That's
going to
the
get it
point.
for free. It's not, no one's out there doing that because they just love you.
Right. They're working through their own stuff, most likely, right?
And they probably have better boundaries, and they're not, so there's an agenda to go tell people what to do, and you're probably not doing it yourself on those things.
So can you share maybe one or two of your most favorite success stories working with couples? Any big breakthrough standouts?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a couple we were working with back in 2007. And while we were working with them, the man was pretty lost. He was pretty like little boy in life, kind of lost. And his partner was really trying to be a mom for him. And he got kind of tired of that. And at some point while we're working with them, some very aggressive woman came into his life, and he started having an affair. And it was one of those situations where, I mean, she really was a predator and kind of hijacked him. And he was so vulnerable, and so uncomfortable in his own relationship. The door was open, right? And this is what we mean by the 50-50. They were both acting in a way that allowed the potential of this to happen. It's 100% his fault what he did, what he chose. And this couple, she really learned how to take a step back and not control him and choose for herself what she was going to do, whether he was going to come back to this relationship or not. And he did his work and became what you help men become is men have to think for themselves. They have to have their own integrity, because if his wife can tell him what to do, so can any other woman.
Sure.
And no woman really feels safe if she's in control of him. And that's what was happening in this relationship. And we worked with them for a while, and that affair ended. They learned some skills, and then they moved, and we didn't see them for a while. And when we started our podcast, we podcasted them. This is Jim and Vera's story.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 15 years ago. And she travels for a living. And I don't even know if he was really working when we were working with him. He wasn't working steadily.
He was doing like a financials kind of stuff at the time.
And they are so incredibly in love right now. When we podcast, and it was amazing to see that 15 years later, they're like, we still practice what you guys taught us. And she's like, I don't wonder or worry about what he's doing because I'm living my life. And if he chooses to mess up, I know I'm going to be okay and I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm going. But I'm not doing that as a threat or to keep him in line or have him behave. And he's like, I'm ashamed of who I became. I want to answer to myself and have my integrity. And they're so in love because they now allow each other to be who they are. And they've gone through this forgiveness process. And they're probably, I hate to say, maybe in their 60s.
I would say so.
Yeah. And so it's really a beautiful journey of watching people come together and have that much pain between them, because that's a very painful thing in an affair.
Sure.
And to work through that and each take responsibility for their parts and have a healthy relationship after that, not one in force and rules and control.
Mm-hmm.
That's an amazing story and very inspirational, offering a lot of hope to anyone who may be in that situation. Now you do traditional, I would say it's not traditional, but you do offer counseling to couples, but you also have this other program, Couples Synergy. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how folks can find you and that program if they're interested in learning more or participating?
Mm-hmm. Well, our counseling program, our counseling services is done through the Lighthouse, and that's the clinic in Chicago. Couple Synergy is, our own program. This is Jean and I, and it's based on our model of me working with husbands and Jean working with the wives. And we call it a coaching program because it's not necessarily counseling.
Mm-hmm.
It is a training program. There's an educational piece to it. It's very structured. We want to take a couple from point A to point B and not just get them in the room and for them to just sit there and kind of wallow in the difficulties that they're going through, right? That's not beneficial. And so that's why we really call it a coaching program versus counseling.
We have a 3-prong approach. And what we found, and this is probably similar to the work that you're doing with people's physical health. So our couple-to-couple program, that's the deep dive into assessing the individual person and couple and really going into, like you would do probably a thorough history, probably blood work, what's really going on here and where do we need to focus on fixing things?
Yeah, root cause, right?
Yep. And then the other one is you got to work out. You got to go through the motions. You got to change your diet. And that we have a home study course for is like, how do you stay on track with the things that we sort of get lazy with? We have bad habits, that kind of stuff. That's a really important thing. That's our home study course. And then our weekend intensive. Our weekend intensive is like what people in the health field do boot camp. And what happens when you're working with a couple, 1 hour a week, they're going right back into their life. Mm-hmm. So they don't have this big infusion into feeling the benefits of the health for a longer period of time. The weekend, first of all, you're away, you're out of your environment. You are zero distraction except for you're in it. You and your partner, you're learning, you're having fun together, you're in a beautiful place. And what happens is we are asking people to do the work without knowing the payoff. The same thing is true if you go to like a personal trainer. The first time you work out, there's no payoff. It's just some
Right.
pain. And if you did that once a month, oh, there's just always pain. There's no benefit to doing it once a month. And so it's like, well, when is this going to feel better? And when we do the weekend intensives, which is a 3.5-day program, you feel the payoff before you leave. You're in it long enough to know that you are both filled up as people. You have put this big infusion of investment into your relationship. And now you know why you would want to do the hard work, because you feel so much better. You don't ever want to go back to that loneliness and that disconnection again.
That's amazing. Excuse me. So do folks need to sign up for that whole 3-pronged process? Can they do maybe the study course at home or just the weekend intensive, or is it all come as one package?
They can do the home study course on their own. Relationship 101 is what it's called. Especially if they have a partner who's a little bit, kind of iffy about really jumping and diving deep.
Or they don't feel like they have a really big problem that they want to work through.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Or they can go on the weekend intensive, which also incorporates a portion of the home study course, because we want them knowing some basic concepts before coming on board. And then obviously couple to couple, that is really where we're doing a deep dive into your relationship and really helping you fine tune, all of the different factors that are going on.
And the home study course is included in that as well, because the home study course is the meat of what we teach.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is in the middle of a session with a couple, their emotions are pretty high. And when their emotions are high, they're nervous, what's going to happen. They're not in a place to learn. So the home study course, they go home and learn it. And those are the things. So you do have to do the home study course as part of being in the couple to couple or the weekend. But it does stand alone also, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do people find you? If they are smart and they're listening and they know that they can't live without you guys, how do they get hooked up with you?
The simplest way is to go to couplessynergy.com.
Okay.
You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Couples Synergy. But once they go to couplessynergy.com, they can access the weekend intensive, relationship 101, the home study course, or even sign up for a free consultation for couple to couple.
We also do Tuesday night Facebook Live through our Couple Synergy page, and that's at 8 p.m. Central.
Mm-hmm. That's YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn Live.
And we also have a podcast. And if you're going to check out the podcast, we really recommend checking out the episodes on the yellow flags, blue flags, and red flags of relationship. And that kind of highlights when you say, like, is this abuse, not abuse? What's healthy relationship, not healthy relationship behaviors? That's what we talk about in those episodes.
And we have an episode called Green Flags, and
Mhm.
that is actual healthy behaviors in a relationship as well.
Great. I love it. So what does blue and yellow signify?
Yellow is like caution.
Okay.
Yellow is if you have a plant and you're not really watering it, or you're watering it sometimes, it's going to start to have some problems. Over time, it'll wither. So that's what we call like corrosion in a relationship. Nobody's trying to hurt anybody, but they're just not doing the things that could make the relationship thrive.
I'd say every couple in today's day and age falls, at some point into a yellow flag category. And it's very small increments. It happens in small increments, and it happens before a couple knows it.
And that's the easiest place to make the fix.
Sure.
Blue flags are like code blue. Someone is talking at a pretty intimate level with someone of the opposite sex. They're hiding things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to share their social media or emails or finances or something. Those are things that are killing the relationship. So when there is a stressor, that other person is easy to duck out. And then red flags are toxic relationships. Those are affairs, addictions, abuse.
Mhm.
Those are red flags.
Great.
And then the green flag is healthy relationship behaviors.
I love it. So it's very easy for you guys to go find the podcasts that they have out on their platform. And that podcast is also called Couple Synergy. Is that correct? Or
couple synergy, real couples, real stories, real relationships, and you can access that pretty much anywhere, really.
Mm-hmm.
Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio, or even on Audible as well.
Great. So you guys have it. You know how to get a hold of these two. I cannot recommend them highly enough. They are literal magicians and amazing at what they do, and very, very gifted and loving people. So I hope you enjoyed what they had to share. And if you have any questions and can't remember how to get a hold of them, you can always email us at info@shreywellness.com. Dr. Ray and Jean, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It's great to see you both, and I really appreciate all you had to share today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Really, thank you.
It's been really awesome being part of your journey.
Yeah, for me too. I love you guys.
Love you too.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you did like what you saw today, please subscribe, share, and give us a 5-star rating, because these two are superstars. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.